Welcome back, everyone. It's Power Thursdays. I always come back and actually bother you about putting power in your Thursdays. Well, welcome back, and also I'm welcoming myself back into Power Thursdays. Haven't seen you guys in a very long time. I must say, I've missed you guys, but like it's always tradition on the show where we are always sharing new stuff and new knowledge and how to actually do things using technology and how to build solutions catered for specific requirements, catered for specific problems that we'd have either in the workplace or at school or anywhere else. So, without further ado, I will show you what I have for you today. And trust me, it's exciting. We're still on Power Automate. Hopefully, soon enough, probably after like a week or two, we'll be jumping over to Power BI, which is something data analysts would actually love, which will actually make their lives better. But enough with that. Today, we're looking at Power Automate and creating a flow. But before I can share that information with you, I'll just give you a small background. But let me show you my screen first. So, what we're looking at today is a fairly simple scenario in terms of either you're working or either you're at school or either you're just creating projects just for fun or you want to make your life easier. So what I'm talking about is a Power Automate flow that will allow you to extract email attachments from your email and post them in a Teams channel, and also take those attachments and put them in SharePoint, because SharePoint is always my favorite a favorite connection to actually use when I'm using the Power Platform. So what do I mean about this scenario? Imagine a time where you are part of a specific team. Let's say you're part of a finance team, right? Today, we're just shifting a small focus from how we use it for school solutions, but we actually put it out into the real world in terms of how people in the industry use the solutions. So again, to go ahead and specify the details about this specific solution that we're talking about today is, imagine you're working in a team, let's say a finance team, where invoices are being sent to your company, but they're being sent to the finance team. And you guys need to monitor those invoices in terms of checking that the appropriate invoicing has been done. They are sending all of those attachments almost every now and then. And what I know personally, and also what I know and what I've seen from people, is that we don't really look at our emails on a regular basis. So maybe I could receive an email, let's say at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. And then when I receive that email at 4 p.m., I look at it obviously, and then I got off my email because I've read that email. And then there's another email that comes in, and maybe my notification notified me that there's a new email, but I forgot to look at it. And then there's more emails that are coming in and burying that email that I haven't looked at. So our solution today is looking at how to actually solve that problem in terms of having those files from that important email being stored somewhere where you can have easy access to, which is a centralized place, which will be Microsoft Teams. So that would be the scenario for today. I'll give you more information about where else you can actually use this scenario. But without wasting any time, let's go ahead and create our flow. So what will we need for our flow today is a document library created in SharePoint. So if I quickly navigate to SharePoint right now, I have a document library that is already created for myself where you have, it's called invoices. It has the name of it, it will store the name of that specific document or specific file that has been attached, when it was modified, who modified it, who sent it, and what kind of document type, just to play around stuff. And then what we also need is a Teams channel that will be specific to that specific team. Let's say I'm part of the finance team. So if I quickly show you my Teams and I drag my Microsoft Teams to the screen in front of you, just a moment. Just open Teams. Where can I drag it? There it is. So I have this channel called Power Apps Demo, which is a channel that I use with the Power Ninjas most of the time whenever we are preparing our demos and stuff. So this would be the Teams channel that we will use for the solution. So it's a Teams channel and a SharePoint document library. I'll show you later on how to create a document library. It's similar how to you create a SharePoint list. So if you've seen the past videos on creating SharePoint lists, you'll be able to create a document library. So that's what we're going to need. And then we'll need our Outlook email, where we will receive the email that has the attachment, and then we'll take that attachment, send it to SharePoint, post a message on Teams, send it to a tab within that Teams channel where the team members can have easy access to that specific file or to those specific files. So without wasting any time and saying a lot of stuff that probably wouldn't make sense without doing the actual work, let's go ahead and start working. So we'll go back to Power Automate and we'll go and click on Create. Again, I don't want to be sounding like a broken record. You have different options when you're creating a flow. You can create an automated cloud flow, an instant flow, and all of the other options are available to you. And you can also use a template if you want to, and then you can configure it to meet your specific requirements. So let's go ahead and create an automated cloud flow, because they're always my personal favorite. They make life easier. Why am I doing this? It's because our flow needs to trigger whenever we receive an email, so that all of the files that come from within our email with a specific attachment or a specific subject line need to be stored somewhere, because it's for that specific team, which is the finance team. So if I click on automated cloud flow, flow name would be Inspire SA invoicing, right? So our trigger, we need to choose our trigger, of course. Our trigger would be an Outlook trigger this time. So if I say email, if I search for email, there it is, there it's showing. So it says our trigger that we're going to use is when a new email arrives onto our mailbox. When a new email arrives onto our mailbox would be our trigger for today. And then whichever one that you'd want to use in the near future, if there's something different that you're trying out, you can also use those different triggers that are here. But today we're just using this one. Use V3 and not V2. Click on create, and then your Power Automate will be ready to start creating. So one of the options that you'd have now in your trigger, you need to map where exactly is this email arriving from, or is this email arriving to. So for an example, if I'm receiving an email, which folder within Outlook is it getting into? If I quickly go back to Outlook, there's different folders. There's the inbox, there's sent items, there's drafts, there's junk mail, there's deleted items, there's different emails that are there. So you need to specify which folder we're going to use. So in our case, we use the inbox because most of the time the finance team is using their own inbox, receiving all of those emails if they're working in a specific company. And then we would then show advanced options so that we can be able to cater our solution to our specific needs, right? So we can leave these places blank because we don't need them. We wouldn't know where is this email going to, who is this email is coming from. So we leave these as blank. And then on this option where we have to include attachments, we have to say yes, because we want to take all of those attachments and store them in a centralized place, which is our Teams channel, which is also underlying with the SharePoint document library. And then we need to filter out that email. So we do not want our solution to be taking Whenever emails are arriving onto the mailbox or into our inbox, taking all of those attachments that come from with come from whichever email that is getting into our inbox. So what do I mean by that? I mean that if I receive an email from my friend saying that he's sending me an attachment, I don't want my mailbox to be notifying me about that if it's not something important. So what's gonna happen is we use a subject filter. So in our case, or in this solution, we'll say our subject filter is invoice, because it's a finance team. We're doing invoices. I hope Inspire Essay would actually adopt this. The importance would be any, but most of the time, if you think about it, the importance that comes with invoices is very important, because towards the end of the month, companies are always trying to invoice and bill the customers or their clients or whatever they're doing there. So for now, we can leave it as any, but if you want to try out something new, you can leave the importance to change it to high, change it to low or normal. It's up to you. So we leave it to any. And then the last option, which is only with attachments, we need to say yes, because we don't want, now we've filtered this email. It says invoice on the subject line, but it doesn't have an attachment. We won't have anything to do with an email that does not have an attachment. The main purpose is to take that attachment, store it in a centralized place so that the entire team can be able to access it, not just one specific person. Right. So, but before I carry on, one thing to note when it comes to this SharePoint site and the SharePoint document library is that this is a Teams, it comes from a Teams channel or Teams team. So what do I mean by that? If we go back to Microsoft Teams, this team here, you create a team on Microsoft Teams. And then when you create that team on Microsoft Teams, in the background, it creates a SharePoint site for you. So that's why you see that on SharePoint, I have this already. I didn't create this on my own here, but I just created myself a Teams team, a team on Teams. That's very weird to say. I created that on Teams, and then it created a SharePoint site for me. Okay, now to carry on from where we left off, right? So the next steps here now would be to, if you try to think about it, is a person that works with Power Automate would to actually get the attachment from the email. So how do we get the attachment from the email? We we add a new step, and that new step will also be using the Outlook connector or connection. So we have to search for Outlook because we need the attachment and we get it from the email. We can't just say, oh, okay, when a new email arrives, and then that's it. There's nothing else that we can do. So we click on Outlook. What we need to do is to get the attachment from the email. So if we click on this, it'll ask us the message ID. So what does this part mean? It means that we are getting an attachment from the email, but now we're on Outlook and we're getting this attachment. From which message? From which email? Specific email are we getting this attachment from? That's where the message ID comes into play. So if we come here on the side, we search for the dynamic content, whereas we search for the message ID. As you can see there, that's our trigger that says when a new email arrives, when a new email arrives. And then also we need the attachment ID from that specific message that we're getting the attachment. So we need the attachment ID as well. We say attachments, attachment ID, and then it'll put this into a loop. So for an example, if you come into your email or your mailbox receives a new message or a new email, and that email has 2 or 3 or more attachments. So for each of those attachments within the email, we need to get all of them. We don't want to get just one. We need to get all of those attachments within that email or within that specific message. So that's how it works. And then the next step now would be to create a file onto SharePoint. Sorry. So why and how do we create a file onto SharePoint? The reason is because we want to be able to store this attachment onto our document library, which is this one, the document library, which is invoices, so that my team, my finance team that I'm part of, can be able to have a centralized place where all of these invoices that come from different clients go into, and we can be able to access them whenever we need to, so that we can keep track of them. Because it's very hard to say a client sends you an invoice. Let's say they sent this invoice last week Friday, and now we haven't gotten back to them because we didn't see the email, and because of the many emails I received afterwards, so their email was buried underneath. So now I haven't seen it, and now I have to look for that specific email, specific message with its attachment. And when I open that attachment, only I can open that attachment at that specific time. So now when it comes to having a centralized place, that's where we take that attachment from that email. We know that the team, or me, or my colleagues within the team, wouldn't have to go through the pain of trying to find the email on their Outlook. They would just go onto this channel or go onto this document library and look for that specific attachment from that specific person. That's where you see that sent by column coming into play. So let's go back and see. So we need to create that file onto SharePoint. That means we're sending the attachment onto SharePoint, and we save it on our document library. So we click on SharePoint. Oh, that added a condition. So we close that. We click add action within the loop. Within the loop, we need to create a file. What does that mean? It means for each of those attachments that are in that specific email, we need to create a file, or an attachment that is almost mapped to the same attachment that comes from the email onto the SharePoint. That's what we have to do. So what we have to do now is to search for SharePoint, the connect to SharePoint. I know one of my colleagues, which is Yolanda, doesn't like me using SharePoint almost every time. So what we have to do, you'd think that we'd use add attachment, but we're actually creating a file. We're not adding an attachment, since we're using a trigger that is for an email. If this trigger was when a new item is created onto SharePoint, that's when we'd say add an attachment for that specific file. But in our case, when a new email arrives, we get the attachment from the email, and then we create the file onto SharePoint so that it can be able to be accessed from SharePoint or from the SharePoint team. So we say create file. We'll search for an action called create file, not create item, because create file is for document libraries and create item is for SharePoint lists. So we have to specify the SharePoint address, the site address, which is the normal way of doing things. So we look for Power Apps Demo. That's the SharePoint site, if you see there. The folder where we want to create this file in. So what we're going to do is to look for our document library, this document library, and map it there. So we say shared documents, then there's general, then there's recordings. It's not there. So what we have to do now is to quickly change this. There's our document library. So at first I was just browsing through here without checking that our document library is showing in the first options. So there's our document library, which is on invoices. That was my mistake. So we click on invoices. That's where we want to create the file in. And then the file name will be coming from here. What do I mean by that? I mean that our file name will be coming from the attachment that we actually got. I don't know if that makes sense or it doesn't, but I'm playing. The actual truth is that whenever a new email arrives, it comes with the attachment. So with that attachment, we need that it has an attachment name and also has the attachment content. So if I quickly search for attachment name there. So when a new email arrives, it has the attachment, so it has the name. It also has the content of that attachment. So we get the file name, which will be the attachment's name, and then we'll get the file content, which will be the attachment's content from when a new email arrives. Right. Okay, that would be the second action within our loop. Now, the third action would be to update the file properties of that file that we just created. What properties are we updating? We're updating those columns. Well, not these two, because these two will be automatically populated as soon as the file is created on this document library. But we want to update those two to know who sent the invoice and what what type of document is being sent here, which will be an invoice for the most part. And then when someone else is trying to create a different flow for different documents, that's when another document will be a document type here. But mostly now it will be just invoices. So we go back and we search for SharePoint again because we're updating a file that is in SharePoint. And then we search for update file properties. That's what we're updating. A file with its properties. Again, the norm, the site address, where exactly is this file? It's located within a SharePoint site called Power Apps Demo, on which library it's in the document library called invoices. What is the ID of that file? The ID of the file is this one. The one we will get the ID from this action. Then you will see there on our dynamic content, it says item ID. And then the title, well, the title would be entirely up to you, whether you want to do something, whether you don't want to do anything with the title. But in our case, maybe we can be fancy and just leave it be if we want to, or we just put the name. Let's search for name. Then we'll put the name of the file there on the title. You can put anything that you want. And then on our sent by column, now we need to specify who is this file from, who is this attachment from, who is this email from, or who is this invoice from, so that we can be able to track, the team can be able to track, even if it was after 10 days that invoice was sent. And then when we go back to our team, we can be able to search for that person, and then we'll find the invoice, and then we'll do the proper invoicing, and then everyone will be happy. So we search for from. From comes from our action, which is when a new emailer arrives. That's our trigger, not our action. So we click on from. Document type, we can just say, invoice. If we want to have a description, we could have a description, but in our case, there's no need. Mind you, when you want to customize this for yourself, you can have a different a different action or dynamic content where it'll just map to what kind of document is being created here. So if you create a file here, then you specify, is it an invoice or is it a poster, maybe when you're doing something for a different team. But in our case, I'll just hard code and put invoice there. And then that would be it for this part. We've updated our file properties. Now, the next part, which is I think the last part for this action or for this flow, would be to post the message in a chat or channel or in a Teams channel for this specific file that was created or for this specific attachment that was received from our email, so that we can notify the finance team, so that Yolanda, Leto, or Nasis can see on Tori and stuff. So we click on add an action. We search for Teams because that's where we want to notify the team on Teams. We don't want them to go on SharePoint. We don't want them to go onto the email because probably it'll take time for them to access SharePoint on a website and Outlook on a website and stuff. So if they have an app on their phone, they can quickly see the notification and just go quickly to that invoice and actually see and do the proper action that needs to be done. So there's teams, search for the action teams. And then in our case, we want to post a message so that we can notify them. So we're posting a message, post different options here, post message in a chat or channel. So we click that, that's what we choose. And then you can have different options where you want to post the message as the flow bot, or you want to post the message as the user, which means the person who's creating the flow. So in our case, we'll just leave it as flow bot so that it looks fancy for us, so that it can show some form of dynamic stuff within the team, in terms of not it saying that, oh, Diko is always telling people that there's a new attachment that just arrived, or there's a new invoice that just arrived for whichever client it is. So just have the flow bot, which will be something fancy. Now, another option would be to post in. Where exactly are we posting it in? We want to post it in a Teams channel or chat. So we will have to post in either a channel or a chat with Flowbot, or a group chat. In our case, it's a channel in our Teams, right? Which is something that I already showed you guys. Where exactly is this channel, right? Where is this channel? Now you have to, this is where the team property or field comes into play. You need to add the team ID. The team ID will be the name of the team on Teams. So it would be this, right? It would be this name. So this is where we want to post it, on this team. We want to post a notification on this team. So we go back and we choose the options, the different teams that are available there. And then we look for Power Apps Demo. Power Apps Demo is the name of the team, just like I just showed you. So in this case, we've specified the team. Now we need to specify which channel are we posting this message into. So in terms of the different channels that would be existing within a specific Microsoft Teams team, that sounds so weird. But yeah, in our case, the only channel that exists within this team is general. So there are teams where they have different channels within that specific team. So in our case, we'll just use the general team, and then we'll just post messages there using the flow bot, which will be very cool. I will show you guys. So let's go back to Power Automate and specify our team. So our channel, sorry. So you can see on the screen, the only option I have is general, which is, that's the only channel that is available within the Power Apps demo team. So we choose general, and then now we have to specify what message are we really posting onto our team, right? What message are we really posting onto our team? And that would be something that you'd have to wonder and think about it properly, because whenever you're sending notifications onto, like, to your team, you have to try not to be vague, and try not to sound like you are saying something that is like gibberish and stuff. So that's what we're trying to do. You have to be clear and concise. So that's what we want to do for this team, even if it's something that is short and simple. So what I want to do now in our case, what we're going to do is to just send a message that says, hey, finance team, I don't want this to look like an email, so I do this. An invoice was received shortly before this notification, so that they can know that it's a recent invoice, it's not something that is old, with the following message. So this part will be playing a role where if a client had specific instructions within that email sending that invoice, then that's where the invoice or the finance team, which is us within Inspire SA, would then know what is the client invoicing Inspire SA for? What do they require us to do? Are there any hiccups do they have? Are there any questions that they have in regards to the invoice they just sent out? So how do we achieve that? We need a body from that email, meaning that the client will be typing out an email and then attaching a file. So now we want to take that information or that message that came with that attachment within that email and post it in the team's channel so that the entire team can be able to know what the client requires or what the client says about the specific attachment they just sent us. So we'll search for body because that's what we are looking for. You'll see here at the end um on this dynamic content, it says body, which is the body of the message or the preview of the message. I don't want the body preview, I want the body, the actual body. Don't choose the body with the small letters because this one says graph client receive email message. That's something different, which is something we'll probably show you in the near future, but right now let's focus on this. So the body of the message, and then afterwards we can say so that the team can know where exactly to find the attachment or the invoice that was attached to with this message. So we'll say please find the attachment the attached invoice. Now I sound like I'm writing an email. The attached invoice in the invoice tab within this team. Thank you. Then that's it. Right. So that's our flow. We can save it. Then we save it. But one thing to note now is that I said towards the end of that message, please find the attached invoice in the invoice tab within this team. So let's go back to our Microsoft Teams team channel. That sounds weird again. So currently, if we're in the channel general, you'll see that there's general and then the tabs that are there is posts, files only. So we can add another tab, which will be the invoice tab that I just spoke about. That invoice tab, where are we getting it from? It's not just a random tab that we're adding, which will be new. No, it's something that we have already created. What is that? That would be our document library that I showed you in SharePoint. So again, this will negate the matter of fact that they don't the finance team doesn't have to log into SharePoint using their browsers and go look at the attachment or go look at the invoice file there. They can look at it within their cell phones or within their Microsoft Teams, which is a centralized place. So if we click on that add button there, then it'll say add a tab. We are looking for SharePoint, or we can choose document library. Let's choose SharePoint. So we add it just using SharePoint for some learning purposes, obviously, but we could have taken a shortcut. But I just want us to just add it through this long way so that you guys can learn. So what we are going to choose now is, I think it would be this document library. If we wanted, we would have added documents, but that's not where we're storing the file that we were going to create with that flow. So we will use invoices. We click on invoices, then we click on save. If we wanted to, we would have unchecked that and then it wouldn't have posted something onto the team's channel, which is general. So in our case now, if you see this tab is a spitting image of let me quickly try and get it on the screen. spitting image of this document library. So that would be a centralized place where the entire finance team from Inspire SA can be able to access the created files or attachments that we got from those emails. Instead of them having to go to Outlook, and then on Outlook, they have to download the attachments, save them on their phone, and then all of that process, and then they have to go to either SharePoint if they had sent the files onto SharePoint just like we did, and then now they have to look at the attachments using SharePoint. They don't have to do all of that. They can just access those files within Microsoft Teams on that specific finance teams channel or Teams team, right? So we've added our invoices tab here, and yeah, we're good to go. We're good to go. So if you go back to posts within general, you'll see that it says editing new tab at the top of this channel. Here's a link. So if we go back to our Power Automate flow, that's a very, very, very nice wallpaper there. Yeah, never mind. We go back to our flow. We just change this. Instead of saying edit to edit within this team, we say within this channel. Yes, within this channel. We'll say channel, not team. It's not a team, it's actually a channel. You can't add tabs to a team. And then we save. Now it's time to see when the magic happens before I get scolded for wasting so much time. So let's go back. We close that, and then we will send an email to my Outlook email. So I'll use my Gmail account to send an email to my Outlook account. So we go back here to my Gmail. We compose a new email to someleze.diko at studentambassadors.com. Our subject needs to be invoice, or else it will never take the information and save it to SharePoint and take it to our Teams channel. If it doesn't have invoice, our Power Automate flow does not trigger. But if it has invoice in its subject, if the subject of the email says invoice, then it'll take it. And then I'll say, hey, finance team, I realized that Narcisse owes me money. Here is the invoice for the money he owes. I hope he doesn't kill me for this. And then next thing, I attach a document. So if I attach a document, let me look for a document there. I'll use this one. Yeah, that's fine. I'll use this document, attach it, wait for it to attach, click on send. I send it, and then go back to Outlook and see if we've received it. We haven't received it, so we wait for a bit. So in this case, while this thing is still sending the email to me, in this case, just because I'm sending myself the email doesn't mean that the flow only works when you're sending yourself an email. No, the flow works when someone sends an email to the finance team with the subject header or subject line saying invoice in their email, and then the flow will work. Anyone, even if I get Narcisse to send me an email to my Outlook email, it'll run the flow in the background. So I've received the email, right? I won't open it. I received the email. There's the email, right? Hey, finance team, I realized that Narcisse owes me money. Here is the invoice for the money he owes. And then I attach the file. Right. So now imagine all of these emails that I'm receiving almost on a regular basis from the program would bury this and I wouldn't see it properly. And then let's say that was Narcisse who sent me that email, or that was Yolanda. And then they'd be like, you're so negligent. I've been trying to get the invoice. Your team is very negligent. And then we lose a client, for an example, if it was a client. But this way we can be able to get a notification within Teams, right? So if we go back to our flow to check if it ran, we refresh, it says it ran and it succeeded. And then we go back to our SharePoint to check if it was sent through. There is our file, it says invoices, there's the name, there's the file itself. It was modified a minute ago. Like I said, those would have been auto-populated by you sending the thing onto SharePoint. And then it says that it was sent by someleze.d@gmail.com, which is the client. That would be the client. And then the document type would be the invoice. And then now to double check if it really worked, now the main purpose of this entire video or the entire session actually was to show you how to take the attachment and get into a centralized place, which is our Microsoft Teams channel. So if you go back to Microsoft Teams and we check our Teams, it says, "Hey finance team, a new invoice was just shortly received with the following message." Well, that was the message I sent, which is, "Hey finance team, I realized that Narcis owes me money. Here's the invoice for the money he owes." And then I say, "Have a um look at it on the invoices tab for this channel." That's what I said, right? That is what I said. Or that is what we wrote on our flow when we were configuring it. So the flow bot, that was the flow bot. It's not Someleze, it's not Narcis, it's not Yolanda that sent through this. It's a flow bot. You can see how cool it looks within the channels. So there wouldn't be a dispute saying that you're running after us, trying to get those documents. Now you're a pain, all of those things. So the message was posted successfully. Let's see if we follow this instruction that says, "Please have a look at it on the invoices tab for this channel." We go to the invoices tab for this channel, and while we wait for it to load, there's the file, there's the information about who sent it, and there's the document type. And then that's it. That will be it for the session. That will be it. We've accomplished what we wanted to do. So anyone who's out there that is in a team, maybe a finance team, if you are doing HR, if you're doing accounting, even if you are doing anything else in terms of whichever career field that you're in, you could use a solution catered for your specific needs. So before I go, I can just give you small scenarios. For an example, people who are part of hackathons can use this kind of solution in terms of, I know when you're part of a hackathon, they send most of the times emails with attachments. So sometimes it's hard for you to keep track of those emails because I know sometimes I can't look at my emails. But you can use this solution and take the attachments from that email for that hackathon because it's something that you would need, and store them in a Teams channel for yourself and for your team, because you guys end up creating a group chat or a Teams channel where you can be able to communicate with the entire team. So if you guys are using Teams, this would be a very perfect solution for people who are part of hackathons, where they can just pull all of the attachments that are sent through by the hackathon teams and then just take those attachments without having to download them on your phone. Take those attachments, send them to SharePoint, send them to your teams, and then everyone within the team can be able to access the information at any time, anyway, using a cell phone. Yeah, and another scenario I can think of is if you are at school, university, or high school, you can also use the solution if you're being sent almost on a regular basis emails with projects, with the subject line project for your projects. And sometimes it's hard for you to actually keep track of your emails, because sometimes I know some people say they can't see their emails, they can't receive their emails, or it got buried somewhere, somehow. If it got buried in a spam folder, there would be a case where if we go back to our Power Automate here, where's Power Automate? It's here. If we go back to our Power Automate here, if it got buried in your spam folder, For your email, you can specify here and say, okay, anything that goes into spam and has the subject line project. Then you can take all of the information about your project, all of that information, the instructions from your lecturer or your teacher, and also the attachment that has the project details. Take it and start into Teams. And then that's it. Everything would be nice for you. So those are the two scenarios I can think of for now of where you can use it other than being part of a finance team. This was more based off how the industry would normally use a solution like this. Hopefully, Inspire SA endorses me for the solution, and any other company that's out there that could be watching this specific session. I'd be happy to help if you guys want anyone with the certain expertise when it comes to Power Automate and creating certain solutions. Even if I'm not the one that creates it, but I can teach. I can teach your team how to create a solution like this. Well, again, one thing to note is that we sent an email to our Outlook mailbox. It had the subject filter, which is invoice, so it went through in when an email arrives, and then it went through, it got the attachment within that email with the message and the message ID. It created a file into our SharePoint document library. That I'm just recapping, document library with the file name and its content. It updated the file properties, which is the columns within the SharePoint document library, those columns. And then afterwards, it posted a message within the team's channel. So it says, "Hey, finance team, an invoice was received shortly before this notification with the following message." And then we took the message within the email that was sent to us in Outlook. And then we say, "Please find the attached invoice in the tab within this channel." So you will see there, if we go back to this channel posts, you will see there in the messages within the Teams channel, there it says, "Hey finance team, an invoice was received shortly before this notification with the following message. Hey finance team, I realized that Narcis owes me money. Here's the invoice for the money he owes. Please find the attached invoice in the invoice tab within this channel," which that's where the invoice is, which is just the document library we have within SharePoint. That's where it speaks to it. It's a tab within our Teams channel. And yeah, that's it. That's our solution. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this session. Thank you so much for coming through and watching us, giving you guys power to your Thursdays. Hopefully you'll have a wonderful evening, a very powerful evening as well. And yeah, there's different scenarios, different requirements, and different things that you can use Power Automate, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agents when it comes to this stuff. This kind of technology is really great when you use it for your personal projects, for your work purposes, when you're trying to make your life better within your workspace, all of those things. Yeah. So without wasting any more time, thank you so much for coming through. And yeah, have a powerful evening and also have a powerful Thursdays. That would be all. Before I forget though, be sure to join us tomorrow. We have Azure.net Fridays, which is one of the craziest and most wonderful sessions that you could possibly find. And yeah, just a small spoiler, at some point within Power Thursdays, we'll also be using Azure in conjunction with the Power Platform, and you'll see how it actually works together. And I'm sure the guys from Azure.net Fridays and the guys from AI Tuesdays will be so amazed that we can on Power Thursday actually use Azure with Power Apps and Power Automate and Power Virtual Agents. But anyways, enough jibber jabber. Thanks everyone again for coming through. Have a great evening. Bye.